What is up, Mizzou fans? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com, covering your Missouri Tigers, and today I wanted to break down Mizzou's 45-3 victory over the UMASS Minutemen in Massachusetts, in Amherst. Still can't believe that Mizzou actually went on the road and played that game. Thank you, Jim Sturk. But I wanted to make a little quick hitters video on just some of my thoughts coming out of this game. Braden and I did not think it was worth it to really do a post game after this one because there's just not much to say. There's not much you can learn from this game. As they say, the only thing you can learn about your team from these types of games is bad things. And I wouldn't necessarily say we learned any bad things, but I don't think we also learned any good things, and you just really wanted a couple things out of this game. One, for it to not be close, which it wasn't. Mizzou won and covered the spread, which I think should have been the bare minimum expectation for this team. But we also saw the offense actually create some explosive plays, which they weren't even really doing as much in the first couple games versus Murray State and Buffalo. Now, there are still concerns about Brady Cook, those that I will get into, but we want to see this offense get into a rhythm, and I definitely think we saw some things that this offense can build off of coming out of this game. So first of all, Brett Norfleet got going finally, and you know, he's had a really quiet start to this year. A lot of people thought he could have been all SEC this year. He just has not had that kind of start at all, but he finally got involved. He caught a huge pass from Brady Cook down the middle of the field very late in the game, and then the very next play caught a touchdown pass, and it was also a nice pass from Brady Cook, which is an encouraging sign after a lot of what we've seen from Brady Cook, both in this game and just throughout the season as a whole. Drinkwitz and company also seemed to make it a point to get the running game going in this one too, especially with Nate Noel being out. The coaching staff said that he had some back spasms. I imagine those probably developed before the game, and then going into the game after warm-ups, they decided that he was not going to be able to go in this one. So Marcus Carroll got a bulk of the carries. He got 15 carries, and he averaged 6.1 yards per carry, and he had 3 rushing touchdowns in this game. And I really liked seeing that because I think Marcus Carroll absolutely needs to play more. He just was not getting very many carries in the last couple of games, and I thought that was a disservice to him. You brought both him and Nate Noel in for a reason. This guy was top 10 in the nation in rushing last year at Georgia State, and we've barely seen him. He's been relegated to a situational running back, and I don't like that because I think he's much better than that, and I think he's really good at getting the tough yards. I understand that Drink has always kind of played the hot hand, but Marcus Carroll is way too talented to be relegated to a situational back, in my opinion. And we also saw Tavoris Jones kind of crack the rotation a little bit in this game, which I thought was interesting. And he actually looked pretty explosive at times. He averaged nearly 7 yards per carry with 6 carries in this one. And then we saw a little bit of Kwan Lacey, who I still think has some ways to go before he really becomes a mainstay in the running back room. But it's always good to see your true freshman running back be able to get in the game and make some sort of an impact. And then, of course, Luther Burden pretty much opened the game with that huge play for 60 yards, and he scored a touchdown on it. Just completely outran the UMass defense, which is what you should expect against UMass. Now, as good as that was to see, I wanted to see Brady Cook actually make some explosive passing plays down the field, and that's not really where Luther Burden did most of his damage, unfortunately. There were some other guys that got involved. I already mentioned Brett Norfleet earlier on. Joshua Manning also caught a short pass and then took it to the house, but it wasn't downfield. Like, that's the thing. Like, that's what I want to see from Brady Cook, is to make plays downfield. And, like, you look at a guy like Marquise Johnson, for example. We all thought he was going to take a massive step this year, especially after being such a lethal threat on the deep ball last year. And he's just, his stats are taking a step back this year. He's barely made. Now, I know he had that ankle injury a couple weeks ago, and that's probably limiting him still a little bit. But how is Marquise Johnson not getting utilized at all the way he was last year? And Theo Weiss was wide open on free play where the defensive line for UMass, they jumped early, and Brady Cook underthrew Theo Weiss on what should have been a touchdown. And there were also some really other poor moments from Brady Cook in this game. He took a really bad sack right before the end of the half that almost cost Mizzou points at the end of the first half. It was right after the Corey Flagg interception, which I'll get to in a little bit. But Brady Cook took an awful sack. And yes, the left tackle, Marcus Bryant, he got beat on that play. But Brady Cook, as the veteran quarterback for this program, you have to know when to get rid of the ball. You have to have better pocket presence, and you just can't let those types of plays happen. Then there was another one that I remember where Brady Cook, it was third down, and he didn't even have any pass rushers close to him. He rolled out of the pocket. He's towards the sidelines, has nobody even around him, and just nonchalantly throws it out of bounds. And it's like, I understand this is UMass and like the urgency isn't there to make a play, but for the sake of getting into a rhythm, man, make something happen. Even take off and run and see if you can get a first down that way. I mean, there was nobody around him, and I'm not sure if anyone listening remembers what play I'm talking about, but there was a third down in particular where Brady Cook had the opportunity to make something happen either with his arm or his legs and just goes, and threw it out of bounds. And I just don't understand that. I mean, this is UMass, man. This is UMass. And yeah, Brady Cook, you look at his completion percentage, pretty good. He's 14-19 and 219 yards and 2 touchdowns. One could say he probably did his job in this game when you look at the scoreboard too. But that's not this game is for figuring things out, and I just don't think we figured anything out on offense. I think in this game what we saw was Missouri's playmakers made plays against a much less talented UMass team. That's what we saw. The Joshua Manning play, that was a short pass. All of Luther Burden's big plays came off of short passes or dump offs or handoffs. Like, we need to see more out of the deep passing game with this team. Your receivers are too talented. No matter how much the offensive line has struggled so far, they're still too talented to be this bad. The passing offense with Brady Cook is a veteran quarterback. Yeah, the offensive line may not be great, but as a quarterback, you have to be expected at this level, in this league, you have to be expected to sometimes make something out of poor situations. I look at a team like Vanderbilt and their quarterback, Diego Pavia. It's not like Vanderbilt is overwhelming teams up front with their offensive line. I mean, you want to talk about a talent discrepancy. There may not be a bigger one between Vanderbilt's trenches and everyone else in this league. And yet, Diego Pavia still looks awesome for Vanderbilt week in and week out. It's not too much to ask Brady Cook to make the best of an offensive line that hasn't been playing necessarily well this season and still being able to manage the offense and have a downfield passing game. And we just haven't seen it. So I would say that my concerns for this team on offense are still there. Nothing was really solved. Yeah, great to see some explosive plays, but we didn't see really anything down the field, and that's what's disappointing to me. I think Mizzou was able to out-talent UMass, which is good. I mean, you should have more talent than UMass, and it was good to be reminded that, hey, like, we have the horses. They just haven't put it all together yet for whatever reason. And if there's something else that I want to say after this game, I think Josh Manning should be replacing Mookie Cooper as a starting wide receiver. And I appreciate Mookie Cooper. I like Mookie Cooper, everything he's done for the team, for the university. It was really good to see him kind of round into form last year after starting out kind of rough when he first transferred to Missouri. But it seems like his feel-good story should have ended last year. And I know that they wanted to come back for one last shot at the college football playoff and everything like that. But Josh Manning is just better than Mookie Cooper. Mookie Cooper's been a huge disappointment, and they keep trying to throw him. He's like 5'9", and they keep trying to throw him contested catches. He's not coming down with them, and he's not fast enough to get separation on them. I mean, it's not like Mookie Cooper is a burner, so I'd rather see Josh Manning, and I thought he was pretty fast. He's a long strider for sure, but the athleticism and the speed is certainly there with Josh Manning. We heard good things about him in camp, so let's see more of it on the field on game day. And now, talking about the defense. So, the defense is kind of whatever. I still haven't really changed my opinion on anything that I had after the Texas A&M game. The pass rush is still a concern for me. I mean, it's not like they were overwhelming UMass up front on defense and just bringing their quarterback down anytime they wanted to. That's not what we saw. Corey Batoon definitely brought more blitzes in this game, which is something that a lot of fans were calling for. But the blitzes weren't getting home all that much, and it's still just not a great sign. I still think, and I've said this from the beginning, my two biggest concerns about this team were defensive line and cornerback. Those are my two biggest concerns coming into the year. The Darius Smith injury really hurt, and you didn't plan for that before, but without him, I mean, I'm just not seeing the production at defensive end. Johnny Walker has still been extremely quiet, extremely disappointing this year. Zion Young is good, but not great. And Chris McClellan seems to be the leader on the defensive line. But here's the thing. I saw Ja'Kai Lang stand out a few times, who hasn't played as much over the past couple weeks. I think he definitely earned a shot at more playing time. We saw Williams Nwaneri record his first career sack for the Tigers, and I think he should start to figure his way into the rotation at some point this season, if this is what we're going to keep seeing from the defensive ends that are currently starting and in the rotation. So yeah, pass rush still needs to get stuff figured out. Secondary, I thought, was not great. They settled in later in the game, but they definitely struggled to defend RPOs. Like, there were a couple times where Drayden Norwood, Toriano Pride, Marvin Burks, like, they were all getting fooled, and UMass was getting big 20-yard chunk plays down the field. That was bad. And there was one play in particular where Drayden Norwood was in the wrong spot, didn't know what he was doing, thought he had safety help, turns around and immediately starts yelling at Marvin Burks like it was his fault, and he got pulled from the game after that. I noticed Drinkwitz was not having that, him immediately blaming his teammates. So the secondary is scaring me. The secondary is something that looks like it's going to cost us games if it does not get figured out. And the secondary is a position in which I think the talent just isn't there. And I said this coming into the year, that was my big concern, was cornerback and secondary as a whole, because I thought they didn't do enough in the portal. Like, they kind of mailed it in after they got Toriano Pride. Toriano Pride has been kind of a disappointment this year. I like Drayden Norwood as a cornerback 3 on last year's team, but behind KAD and Rakestraw, but as a cornerback 1 this year, he doesn't look the same. And I just think they gave way too much responsibility to a bunch of guys that were inexperienced and unproven. And we're seeing the results of that. And we don't have the pass rush to make up for it either. Like, Corey Batoon isn't wanting to send that many blitzes because he's wanting to drop his guys back in coverage so we don't suffer there. But our pass rush isn't good enough to do that. But at the same time, if you blitz, your secondary is not going to hold up long enough to really make things happen. And I think that's what we're running into as the competition we play gets better. Now, that didn't really happen in this game too much because, again, it's UMass, but I can just tell you right now from watching this team yesterday that kind of stuff is going to get exposed against conference opponents. Some positives, though. Corey Flagg, who I just think has kind of risen to be a leader of this defense. He had a huge play at the end of the first half, ran an interception back, and he jumped right on the route, too. He ran it all the way back into UMass territory, and we were able to add on 3 points before the end of the half. And had that play not happened, maybe UMass scores, and they get the ball back after half. Maybe they score again, and all of a sudden it gets a little scary. It gets a little interesting. Now, I don't think Mizzou was ever in danger of losing this game, but that was a turning point in the game right there where it went from, is Mizzou really going to do this today versus, okay, we're fine. We're going to win this game very comfortably. So that was a huge play by Corey Flagg. That really flipped the script. Also, true freshman linebacker Nicholas Rodriguez got some playing time. He actually led the team in tackles. I thought he really flashed for this team, and I want to see more of him at some point this season. Marcus Clark, who kind of fell out of favor this year after the departure of Blake Baker, and I thought played some really good snaps for this team last year, he got back in a little bit more. He recorded a sack on a blitz, and he also added on a pair of tackles. I think Marcus Clark should be added back to the rotation as someone who's a steady option that has experience in this defense, that played good football for you last year. We're just at that point in the season where you got to try different things out and see what works. And they were kind of doing that on offense yesterday, too. There was a point in the game where Caden Green was pulled in favor of Mitchell Walters, and they started running to that side of the offensive line, and they were having success, and Drinkwitz really wanted to establish the run in this game. There was one special teams gaffe on an obvious fake punt situation from UMass where they were able to gain 40 yards. That was inexcusable. That's got to get figured out. You can't have that happen. I mean, everyone knew that they were going to try to fake something there, that there was going to be an opportunity if Mizzou's defense or their special teams gave them a look that they liked. And, of course, UMass took advantage of the situation. But that can't happen against UMass. Outside of that, I don't really have too many thoughts. I mean, you took care of business. You won 45-3, move up a couple spots in the AP pool. Cool, whatever. But the next test is going to be next week against Auburn to see if this team really learned from its mistakes against Texas A&M, clean some things up against UMass, and can actually handle an opponent, because Auburn is bad, guys. They are bad. That should be a win for Mizzou, no questions asked. And if it's not, if it's anything other than that, I mean, we got real problems. And I don't know if there's a solution to them, because at that point it'll be week 7. If you don't have it figured out by week 7, I don't know if you ever will have it figured out. And then you have to go to Tuscaloosa, and I think I haven't written off that game yet, because if you guys have seen Alabama play the past couple weeks, that one is certainly still winnable for Mizzou. Everything that Mizzou wants, it can still have this year, because there's been a lot of chaos in the SEC already. Ole Miss lost again last night to LSU. Ole Miss's playoff hopes might be over after that. Mizzou's are still alive. And when one more team gets knocked out of it, when one less SEC team is in that race, it makes Mizzou's path look a lot easier again. And look, Mizzou's season is not over. A lot of people thought their season was over after the Texas A&M game. It's certainly not over. This thing can be salvaged. The Alabama game is winnable. So hopefully we see some improvement from this team against their next SEC opponent. I should also add on as well, anyone that thought Drew Pine could maybe save this team, yeah. If you saw him play against UMass, that's out the window, that idea. My bigger question is, what does Mizzou do after this year once Brady Cook leaves? Because Drew Pine is certainly not someone I'd want to see start for this team next year. He definitely has more zip on his passes than Brady Cook, and that's what I've always said, but I think there's a reason we haven't seen him yet. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on Mizzou's 45-3 win over the UMass Minutemen. We didn't really learn anything, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I want to hear from you guys down below in the comments what you thought of this game, if you agree, disagree with anything I said. With all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Mizzou fans can find this, and check out my work on showmefootball.com for more. I'll see you all in the next one. MIZ.